What is a Skattie icon?
What is a Skattie icon? Someone everyone knows.
Someone who shapes our
This iemand wat ons kultuur vorm.
Embodies our culture.
An untouchable demigod of pop culture. Well, me.
I don't know a lot about your background, where you came. I just always see you
around running.
Working, like your butt off. How did you grow up?
Grew up in Durban, actually, on the East Coast, and half my mom's family are in Australia. So, as kids, we got carted between Sydney and Durban, which was a fun growing-up experience. Then I came back and finished high school, went to fashion college, then moved to London. From London, moved around Europe, from Europe to the US, back, forth, years out of a suitcase. In fact, that's kind of how I discovered Cape Town, because I came here on a job. I'd been here before, obviously, and I came on a job for a Japanese client through the New York office, and decided to stay for 2 weeks for a vacation. Became 2 months, became 2 years. Now, almost 8 years later, yeah.
And how did you start producing shows? How did you get into this job? Because I know it led into this.
It was actually Craig Native.
Okay,
Years ago, yeah. Our careers kind of started out at the same time.
Okay.
And he was showing at SA Fashion Week. And I went up with him to help with the production of the show. And I remember running out from backstage just before the show was about to start to tell Lucilla something. And I ran up into the control booth, and she took the headset off and put it on my head. And that's how my career started. And then she called me up a few weeks later and asked me to produce it at Fashion Week. So I did that for like a year and a half, and then I realized that if I wanted to do it in the way that I wanted to do it, I would have to go and do it in the world to learn properly and see how it was done, learn all the technical elements, understand why production is designed the way it is for fashion, and really get a solid background knowledge, a global knowledge of it, which is what I then went to do.
Do you remember, since you were going between Australia and Durban, do you remember the first moment that you discovered fashion or somebody stylish? Or?
I do, and it was watching, and I will admit this publicly, it's fine, the George Michael Freedom video.
Okay.
Yeah. I was in high school, can't remember what age, so I don't remember exactly what year of high school. And that video came on, and I had no interest in that world. I was more sort of interested in the fine arts and design, that kind of thing. And I guess I kind of looked at it as a fine art movie, in a sense. And, with these beautiful supermodels. I didn't know they were supermodels. And I remember that specific moment when Christy Turner comes walking through the doors with the sheet.
Yeah.
And it was like one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen. So I wanted to know more about that world. Who were these people that made this? And I think that's what sparked my interest in fashion.
For you, what is the most important aspect of a show? Is it the models? Is it the lighting? Is it the designer's collection? What for you is the most
Well, look, it's always the designer's collection. It always starts there. That's what we're there to do. We're there to sell clothes for the designer. Then every other aspect basically supports that objective. So ideally, you want to have the right girl in the right garment, lit beautifully, and truthfully as well, so that it reads as authentically as possible. I remember years ago, there were designers who will remain unnamed, and they were slightly panicky that the lighting was now so bright that people could see the top stitching on the garments. I'm like, that's kind of the point. They need to be able to see every single detail,
I'm from the old school, where models walked and they were just like, they were floating on air.
Yeah.
How do you deal with,
With
how do I say it nicely? How do you deal with the challenges of the way that models walk now, and some of them really can't walk?
Yeah. Look, I think I for one, I love a diverse energy, because, there's a time, again, we're not in a market that's so dictatorial, where models are literally devoid of any kind of personality. I've worked on shows where designers want that on purpose. The model becomes utterly secondary to the entire premise. So, you know, I don't prescribe to the idea that a model needs to walk in a certain way and be a certain way. You know, so it's a fine balance. I don't have problems with as long as it's authentic. For example, I mean, I've often said to girls who have a problem doing a Naomi Campbell panther strut, I'm like, okay, well, maybe don't be that. Maybe find who you are. You know, because other models have a signature. You just need to find that signature so that it carries the confidence with it. You know.
Is there anything that bores you about the industry?
That sort of, you know, that unending cycle of that darling your shoes and that kind of thing, that bugs me a bit. That's why I tend to spend a lot less time at fashion parties or after parties and stuff like that. Funny thing happens when you put a bunch of fashion people in a room. I think their own secret insecurities take over, and then this sort of charade starts to play itself out, and that kind of bores me a little bit. But then I guess that's kind of part of the game. You know, people create caricatures and personas as a way of guarding themselves against, or guarding the reality or the truth of what they really want to say or how they really are, which I think is kind of unnecessary, but maybe, I don't know, when you spend 30 years in an industry, maybe it is necessary so that you keep that part of yourself separate to the work part, but yeah.
Talking about, just going quickly to collaborations, is there something crazy vision that a designer said to you that you were just like, you're out of your mind, this can't happen?
There have been some. I remember one designer wanted girls to slide out. She referenced a music video where they were literally floating. I was, you know, the thing is, look, I mean, and I always reference that McQueen show. We could probably do anything if we had the budget to do it. That is the reality. You know, you want Victoria's Secret? Great. Victoria's Secret cost $25 million. So, you know, so that's the thing. And I think that the other thing, which is, I guess, what makes working here more interesting, because working in some other places, money's not a problem. So it's like, you know, they want the runway covered in fur. And so you have to go and find that, well, fake fur, whatever it is. This particular runway was cowhides, I remember, that had to be flown in from Scotland. And because money is no object, they get what they want. The thing that really bugged me about that, though, I have to say, is just the sheer volume of waste. Because afterwards, what happens with all that stuff? And then you just get told, no, you can throw that stuff away. And it was like, God, that used to kill me.
What do you know for sure about your job?
What do I know for sure about my job? That it's of use. And I think that's important to me. It's the reason why I came back to live and work here. It wasn't just to settle in Cape Town because it's pretty, which it is, of course, it's beautiful, but because I think that what I had to offer, and in terms of my experience and the knowledge that I was lucky enough to acquire, was of most use here. There's nothing that I could add that hasn't been done in Paris or in New York or in Milan or in London, or, you know, so, and besides that, I would have had to work for 20 years just to be able to get to the point where I would have a voice that someone was willing to listen to, because that paying your dues lasts for 30 years. And that frustrated me because I had a lot of ideas that I thought were well researched and well, you know, and I was often told, yes, but that's not what we need from you just yet. So, yeah, and that's why it kind of made it ironic when one of those people came back and saw those ideas in action. I was like, well, they were kind of there the whole time. So, yeah, there was that. And also, you know, I think I played a little part in the way that fashion and fashion weeks have been shaped. I would like to think about bringing the focus back onto the clothing, making sure that that was the core element.
What's important to you?
Happiness, being challenged, otherwise I get bored really quickly. And to strive, to constantly be striving. I mean, I get a bit, I think I'm sometimes as hard on other people as I am on myself, because that's just kind of always how I've been. So, you know, intentional sort of mediocrity and laziness. And when I mean laziness, I mean like mental laziness. That really bugs me a lot. But I'm learning in my older age to become less judgmental of how I perceive that in other people, and to kind of just let people be, and work through their own rhythm. I mean, I still believe that there's something to be learned from everyone that I come into contact with, in every capacity, every day.
What is something iconic to you? What makes something iconic?
Change. I think when it's most necessary. I don't think, sometimes it's not in the kind of common conscious that people think that change is necessary, but when it occurs effectively and changes the way the status quo, then I think that's when it's most effective.